Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a brand new stream. We got a lot of ground to cover tonight, so I'm glad that we could do this. It's definitely been around a week since our last stream, so we're going to be talking about quite a bit, but the first thing that I think we're going to just be covering throughout the night, and we'll definitely touch on some other subjects, I'm sure quite a bit is going to come up in the super chats, is the Supreme Court primary out of the state of Wisconsin. There is a very consequential election. It's an off-year election. It's happening there this year. And whoever wins it, whether it's a conservative candidate or a liberal candidate, is going to be that justice that will sway the court in one direction or another. And this is very crucial. The primary in and of itself, it's not that crucial to watch the vote count. We'll watch the vote count. You're not going to see two liberals. There's no way. You're likely not going to see two conservatives either because Janet Protasiewicz, the liberal, has been spending like crazy. But you also have Daniel Kelly, who has been a conservative justice. I believe he served on the court before. He's been a judge in Wisconsin for quite some time. And he is somebody who lost an election in 2020, but it was on the same day as the crowded Democrat primary. Bernie Sanders didn't drop out until after Wisconsin, so liberals would have that added advantage in that Supreme Court race. I don't think that that's really that indicative of his electability whatsoever. But then you have Jennifer Dorow, who was the judge in the Darrell Brooks trial, the Waukesha massacre trial judge there, and she's gained a lot of support recently as well. And she's been endorsed by the current, very conservative justice that's leaving, that's retiring. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. Then you have the establishment Democrat choice that's right there at 35%. And then you have Everett Mitchell down at 4%. That's like the far left choice, supported by some of these radical leftist types in Madison, Milwaukee, etc. But right now you have results pouring in out of very preliminary results out of Dane County, Jefferson County, but you also have some results in Brown County. That's where Green Bay is. We'll be watching this throughout the night. I'm sure more viewers will pour in. I decided to go live a little bit earlier tonight, mainly because of the fact that, we already had results coming in, and there's a lot of ground to cover, and I was all ready to stream, so I thought it'd just be good that we get it out of the way as soon as we possibly could. But also, keep in mind, we have the Virginia's 4th district as well. There's a special election there. Democrats won it big. That's not surprising. McClellan was, touted to be like the first black congresswoman from Virginia in her campaign. She got ridiculous levels of black turnout in Richmond. She was going up against a terminally online candidate who was not really that well funded. I wouldn't read too much into that one. But it'll be interesting to see what happens here so far. And this is kind of skewed because you have Madison in, 27% of Madison's in, 12% of Milwaukee's in. You have a little bit of Waukesha. That's where Dorow's base of support is. She has taken a sizable lead there so far. But some of the rest of these red counties have not really poured in yet. And it does seem as if Dorow's not doing so well in them, which leads me to believe that it very well could end up being a Kelly versus Protasiewicz general election, which is going to be taking place in, I believe, a few weeks or so, or maybe in April. I think it's sometime in April, probably less than 2 months out from that. But we'll be covering it. There's also other ground I want to cover as well in terms of 2024. There's, you see Trump going out there, and he's making these statements that are a little bit controversial. We're going to be getting into that. I'm sure we're going to get some of the super chats in the mix about it as well. And on top of that, we have Larry Hogan, another 2024 hopeful, being as dumb as you possibly can be, making statements about education and how the government should be involved within it. And his answer to indoctrination was just awful. And that's still a hot button issue among the right, especially the primary electorate. And he completely dropped the ball. And arguably, he would never stand a chance because of his very liberal record, because he was governor of Maryland. He's definitely angling to be the John Kasich of 2024 at best if he does throw his hat in the ring. And we know that that's just not likely to happen. There's no reason for him to even try other than to grift, and that's what it's going to be. But his days are long gone within this Republican Party, and that's a very good thing. But we will also managed to cover the results within that, and we'll get to super chats. We already have a couple super chats in chat. Make sure you guys hit the like button. Make sure you guys subscribe. More results pouring in as we speak. You have Oshkosh is 15% in. Prostatsowitz does lead there, but again, having a plurality doesn't necessarily mean that you have a majority. And Republican turnout is definitely going to be higher because that primary is a little bit more contested. So don't exactly read too much into the results, especially this early, where you do have the majority of the votes in from liberal areas, and then you have a little bit in from Waukesha, which is why Jennifer Doro is doing better than Daniel Kelly. So let's see. Okay, shout out to GamerKid96 for becoming a member. Miku Huntu Forex Bot says Doro was the Brooks judge and she's a conservative. Oh Lord, please God, no. Well, she definitely is somebody who's intriguing because she's been propped up by a lot of these conservative establishment types, but it does seem as if there's a great portion of the grassroots that really have defended her as well, which is interesting. But furthermore, you look into it and it's like, I mean, you have a lot of these like electabros that are just trashing Kelly, and I think a lot of that is because of how he lost in 2020. But you look into it, and it's like, okay, the reason why he got drilled was because of the fact that it was on the same day as the Democrat primary between Biden and Bernie Sanders. Of course, the Democrats were going to turn out more than Republicans were for Trump in a primary that was not really contested in the first place. Like, they shouldn't have had the election on the same day. Look at the primary turnout. It was a vastly different story there. But either way, I digress. We'll see what happens. We'll see if Doro manages to pull it out. Either way, this is a very crucial seat. It doesn't matter who the nominee is. They need to win in the April 4th election. Because if they don't, then Democrats are going to have a lot more control over policy in the state of Wisconsin. The reason why a lot of Evers' agenda was blocked was because of the Wisconsin Supreme Court. And now it seems as if a lot of that could go out the window, which is why this is very important. This is a warning to a lot of people out there, especially those in the state of Wisconsin. And these lower state, local elections, they matter. They matter a lot. And this is why it's very important that we pay attention to them, because they can actually impact the lives of a lot of people, especially in a swing state. You talk about election laws. You talk about redistricting. You talk about a lot of different things. It definitely plays a major role. So we're 18% of the way in now. Let's see what counties have poured in. Milwaukee's now 32% in. Madison is 27%, and it doesn't seem like we're getting a lot of votes out of some of these other counties. Daniel Kelly is winning the northern counties in Wisconsin, or he's doing better than Doro in pretty much all of them that we see here, but Doro is holding strong in Milwaukee in terms of being in the first place for a conservative. And then you look in Waukesha, she is in first place there, but that's her home turf, that's her home county. I would anticipate her to do pretty well in Ozaukee too. Washington's going to be a big litmus test though, because that county, even though it's in the WOW counties, it's very Trumpian per se, because you do have a very large white working class population there. Okay, more counties are starting to fill in. And I would anticipate Prostatsowitz to win a lot more counties than a Democrat would, just by looking at the map, because you have only one major Dem candidate or liberal candidate and two conservative candidates as well. So don't read too much into the map. Read into the total combined margins that we're seeing here. And a lot of the rural election, or the rural counties that we're seeing here, are not even reporting any votes, and those that are reporting very little. But Kenosha, that one is 66% in. That's definitely a swing county. The conservative candidates are combining right now for 55% of the vote there, so that's pretty decent. It's pretty decent there, but we'll see. But yeah, this is a big consequential seat that we're going to be monitoring. 25% in, by the way, this early, that's a good thing. We're 10 minutes into the stream, and we've already counted a quarter of the votes. That's good. We like that, especially because Wisconsin, we witnessed the 3 a.m. Wisconsin, or 4 a.m. Wisconsin dump. It actually was after the stream, but that was something that really shifted the momentum in the 2020 election. In a lot of people's minds, the betting markets just crashed because everybody was selling at the same time. It was a big mess for a wide number of reasons. But let's see. IB says New Hampshire flipped for Dems. I don't know what you exactly mean by that. Gus Fadden says, Sup, we're watching the stream at some whatever college GOP. Thanks for the super chat, Gus. Base Cato says Trump is going to Ohio equals America first. Sleepy Joe going to Ukraine on President's Day equals America last. Yeah, well, I mean, are you really surprised? There's a reason why they didn't exactly provide enough disaster relief to these people, or at least take initiative or care about these people. And it's because these are the people that oppose the regime the most. You have these types of voters in these places. Maybe they were voting for the Dems even 40, 50 years ago, but they've just been very disaffected. They came out very heavily for Donald Trump both times in Ohio, even more so the second time in some places. And these are people that the Biden administration is not going to care about rewarding or helping. And it's very evident that they're not. And they only decide to step in when Donald Trump goes to Ohio because they know that he's scoring political points and they want to stop his rise again. And we're going to be talking about that as well. But either way, Biden, we know he's completely owned by Ukraine. We've known about Biden's ties to Ukraine ever since the whole Hunter Biden thing. That's his playground for all of his shady business deals. That's how his family makes his money, is Ukraine. So of course he's going to be out there supporting the globalist puppet that basically has been installed, the new Ukrainian regime that was installed in 2014. Of course he's going to be shilling for that relentlessly and pushing their same propaganda. Are we really surprised about that? No, I don't think that we are. But that's beside the point. Manny says Vivek Ramaswamy is running for president. Yeah, I don't care about these candidates that aren't going to mean anything. Like, oh, this guy jumped in. Oh, he'll get like, what, 0.1% in Iowa if he even stays in that long, if he's able to fund his campaign that long. I don't even know if he's going to be able to. But it will be interesting to see how many Democrats vote against Biden in the primary. I mean, you did see in Obama 2012, like he almost lost Arkansas in the primary. He almost lost West Virginia in the primary. And it's like, okay, yeah, because you have a lot of ancestral Dems in these places. And yeah, they'll vote for a piece of paper against Obama in that primary if they're registered Democrats. And now, of course, there's been less registered Dems in these places. But I mean, it was funny to see like some guy in prison get 40% of the vote in the West Virginia primary against Obama. Even though, it really doesn't amount to anything. It's not like, oh, even if he loses the state. But either way, it'll be interesting to see how Biden gets some blowback from his own base. And the more blowback he gets is going to really determine his possible, ability to galvanize enough voters. But either way, Democrats know how to win elections because they understand the election system. Republicans don't. And I've talked about this in 2 of my past 3 videos were about the similar topic there, and a lot of people tended to want to click on them because they agree, and it's true. So we're right now at 30, how much percent? 32% of the vote is in, so a third of the vote is in. Sam Madsen said, I don't feel good at all about the April election considering we haven't done well in any sort of special election since Mayra Flores. Well, I mean, I don't know if I'd call it even a special election, but either way, it is true. If you do have Democrats that are angry about the abortion thing, which I don't even know to what extent that's true. People are saying that's the reason for the midterm underperformance. I detest that. I disagree. Maybe you could say like, oh, Dixon did 2 points worse or Mastriano did 2 points worse because they made like comments that were very controversial, even though you could argue they shouldn't even be controversial. But still, I do believe that when you're looking at this, it's like, I don't know. We'll see. This is going to be a litmus test for that. It will be. But for the primary turnout so far, a lot of red counties not reporting, and Dems are combined for what, like 56% of the vote, and probably that's dipping. You look at Dane's 40% in Milwaukee, 73% in. I don't know. It depends on the turnout apparatus. Yet again, that's all it comes down to. So, Average Midwesterner says Larry Hogan is physiognomy theory confirmed. Yeah, I mean, the guy's not, look, he's not the best looking guy. He's not in the best shape. He's really not. And I assume the people that support him are arguably in worse shape But yeah, Larry, when was the last time Larry Hogan hit the gym? Like, probably 20 years ago. I mean, you look at the guy, he's like vying to be Chris Christie 2.0. The Kasich thing applies in terms of the food. Kasich on the campaign trail was going out to all these buffets, and like Trump was poking fun at that. Like, why are you still in the race? Oh, it's probably because of the food. I mean, Kasich wasn't like the fattest guy in the world either, but Hogan is, not the best looking guy. And our leaders should be in better shape. I don't think that this is like a non sequitur. I don't think this is like an ad hominem. It's a Chad hominem. I think our leadership should actually be in great physical shape if they want to actually prove that they're capable of leading an entire country. Because if they're making poor decisions for themselves in their diet, in their exercise, obviously some people can't help it. You have people that have like freak accidents or whatever. You have your Mark Kirks, your Cawthorns, your Abbotts, whatever. That's beside the point. But we need leaders that are in good shape. And that's not a take that should be controversial. That's a take that should be universally agreed upon. And that's pretty much it. Physiognomy matters. Do you want to vote for somebody who's like approachable? Or would you rather vote for some like, I don't know, old guy who weighs 300 pounds like Jerry Nadler? Like, of course not. I bet Nadler probably weighs more than that, but whatever. Base Katos, his thoughts on the YouTube CEO recently stepping down? I don't know. A lot of people cheered when Dorsey was stepping down, and then they found out who the replacement was, and their tune changed very differently. So I don't really know what my thoughts are on that. Let's see what the replacement does. I wish Elon Musk would buy YouTube. That'd be pretty cool. I think that, it'd be a much better platform overall if he ran it the same way that Twitter's improved now that he has taken control. Obviously, it's not perfect. He still is working on things. I'm not saying it's fully there yet. I'm not saying Elon's like our guy, whatever. But he has made some improvements. He's brought back a lot of people who were unbanned for reasons that they should not have been banned for. And obviously, we consider that to be a very good thing and a very good step in the right direction. So Knight says, what would it take to win over black voters? You're just not going to do it, more likely than not. I mean, black voters have been voting Democrat since the 1930s. They've been voting like 90% Dem, give or take, maybe like 85 on a bad year, ever since 1964. Like this notion that, we're going to win all these voters that have been so stubborn in their opposition to the Republican Party, even if they agree with us on like 60, 70% of the social issues, whatever. It's like, yeah, no, I mean, you're better off just focusing on maxing out the base, whatever. And yes, you will add black voters to your totals, young black males maybe, if you're focusing on things like, I don't know, being tougher on the whole alphabet agenda. Yeah, that's going to probably galvanize more young black men to vote for the Republican Party, but I mean, it's not going to be by ridiculous margins or anything like that. I mean, different groups do have different interests. Obviously, all people are individuals. You have individuals that are a part of those groups that align with us more, but on aggregate, it's an entirely hard wall to really break, and you could blame it on a wide variety of things, but I don't think we're going to see that in our lifetimes. I really don't. Unless you see like a realignment and the Republican Party becomes like the Liberal Party or something, and like, yeah, it's not going to happen. Like, you could be a Republican and talk about giving reparations, all this stuff, caving into the agenda you should not be caving into, and even then, just because you have an R next to your name, you're still probably not going to get more than 20% of the black vote or whatever. So it's just, in my opinion, not something that's worth focusing on in and of itself, because you're not going to get returns. And if you get like returns at all, it's going to be because A, you're compromising your values, and B, the returns are still going to be minimal. And there's a lot of other voters to focus on that you can get. Some of them, like I said, you will see probably more black voters support you if you just happen to stay strong in your convictions in terms of turning out your own base. And that's what we saw with Trump in 2016 to an extent. So Milwaukee is 67% in. Waukesha is 95% in. Doro with a commanding lead there. So Republicans combining for 64% of the vote in Waukesha. That's good. That's good right there. Washington County, 91% in. Doro winning Washington so far by a decent amount. Interesting sign. You would think there'd be more voters in Washington, though. You really would, especially given how many there were in Waukesha. I know Waukesha is more populated, but I refuse to believe that Washington is just 91% in. I mean, that's got to be some sort of a miscalculation there. So there are a lot more votes remaining. Let's see. Funtime Freddy 420 says, have you ever used Jackson Dude USA election map? If you haven't, trust me, it's helpful for election videos. I highly recommend it. We could look into it. But okay, 49% of the vote is in now. So still a lot of rural counties not yet reporting. And they, for some reason, the Washington tally is off. Ozaukee has not yet reported any votes there so far. And there's just so many rural counties that have not reported. You have some of these like smaller blue counties that are all the way into, like La Crosse. You look at that, 88% in La Crosse, 95% in Eau Claire, 79% in Rock. So there's going to be quite a bit. There's going to be quite a bit of rural votes that have yet to be reported. And now they say we're 50% of the way in. Prstatowitz keeps falling. So I could see the conservative candidates combining for over 50% easily when all the votes are tallied. But, I mean, it's a primary. It doesn't always translate. And there's going to be a lot of factors we're going to look into to predict the end result here. So, Wholesome DJ Aftershock says, we need a new direction. Peterson, Stutzman, 20. Yeah, the whole AZP stuff, a lot of people are just like slandering the guy, basically. I mean, the guy was obviously set up. I don't even agree with the guy most of the time, but like, seriously, like, you see a lot of people just taking things, and like, the guy obviously took an L. Like, he obviously took an L. He shouldn't have done that, but there was a lot that he didn't know at the time from what we know, and I am not going to just go out here and slander the guy's name because I don't even fully know the story, but from what I understand, he was obviously set up, so I will say that much. Eric Jenkins says, you can win some of the black vote best. I say 30-70 split. I'd say more like 15. I think if you try really hard, you get, 15? I mean, that's not exactly going to be enough to get you there. And how much energy would you have to spend trying to get 5% of the black vote? It's not going to help you really win any of these swing states either. If you try to get like 5% of the white working class vote, on the other hand, you're never going to lose Wisconsin. You're probably going to win back Michigan. You're probably going to take Pennsylvania. So it's all more about priorities. Can you possibly win these demographics or do better with them if you spend all of your energy on them? Yeah, maybe 5%. But still, that's not going to be enough to win you an election. It's just really not. Same thing arguably goes for the Hispanic vote. You know, in Arizona, if you spend a lot of time there focusing on flipping Hispanics Republican, okay, you'll get some support there. But still, if you just ignore the other constituencies there, that usually turn out for Republicans, then, well, you're not exactly going to put the numbers up on the board. IB says, Winnebago flip for Dems, opposite in 2022. Well, no, not really. Well, actually, no, if you combine all the votes in the primary, if that's actually 100% reporting, then it is possible that yeah, it's 50-50. So that, I guess you would say, is not a good thing. They projected Prstatowitz will advance to the second round. Doro and Kelly are going to duke it out for the conservative slot. But either way, you're not going to have, I guess you would say, a liberal and a liberal advancing to the runoff, the general, which is a good thing. You don't want to see that happening, and you will still have a chance at this seat. But it's interesting. Let's see. Yeah, nothing out of Ozaukee. That's going to be an interesting county. I would probably anticipate that Doro would do well there. And probably as well, your Racine County, that one could go either way in terms of which conservative is going to get more votes, because we obviously know that Prstatowitz is going to get the most votes in terms of a plurality. That was anticipated. That was expected. Now we're going to be focusing on what conservative gets the remainder of those 45%. So let's see. One last super chat. Sam Madsen says, Eau Claire is pronounced Eau Claire. Did I not pronounce it Eau Claire? Or Eau Claire? I probably did say Eau Claire, but it is Eau Claire. Thank you. But still, I think we have to talk about Larry Hogan, because Larry Hogan went out there on Meet the Press. The guy has Chuck Todd from NBC just like fawning over the guy, like is so impressed. Oh, wow, we have like this token Republican that's just going to be shilling for our agenda, whatever. And that's exactly what he is. I mean, that physiognomy, you look at it again, it's like it gets even worse the more you look at it. But that's beside the point. I care more about what he said and the content of what he said here, because we've been critical of DeSantis from time to time. We believe on this channel that he is being propped up by the establishment. He's being propped up by a lot of these donors. They're funding his campaign, the campaign that hasn't even started yet technically, and that's kind of the reason why you have Trump attacking him, among other things. But I will say, you're going to have the clown car. You're going to have the sideshow. You have people like Nikki Haley already in the race. John Bolton is expected to announce. Mike Pompeo is expected to announce. Mike Pence may run as well. But then you have Larry Hogan out there. And DeSantis has done some good things on education. And everybody knows this. And he has cracked down on like CRT. He's passed like the Don't Say Gay, or whatever bill they called the Don't Say Gay bill, which basically means that basically states that you are not allowed to like talk about gay sex until the 5th grade, which is like, okay, this is like his big win, whatever. It's a good thing, but like you're only rolling the ball back, a couple years? Shouldn't be talking about it at all in schools, especially elementary school, but that's beside the point. Larry Hogan has a problem with this, because he says that it's small. It's a small government philosophy that he has. He says, I'm a small government common sense conservative. Which again, what does that mean? It means we'll lower your taxes by 1%, cave on literally every single social issue, and do nothing else. And that's what it comes down to. And he says that it sounds like this is big government to say that schools are not allowed to teach certain things that should not be taught in public schools anymore. So, first of all, this is wrong for many reasons in terms of like his own logic, but I will say that it also shows that he's posturing a presidential run. He's attacking Ron DeSantis. He's attacking DeSantis, which inadvertently does help Trump. If DeSantis and Trump are both in the race, and then you have these other people who are going to be focusing their time and energy attacking Ron DeSantis and trying to get his support, it's only going to help Donald Trump, by the way. You could say, oh, what about a contested convention? Maybe the RNC will try to stop Trump again, and they'll like change the rules on certain states like they did before a lot of these 2016 primaries, because they were trying to force the contested convention then and try to give it to somebody other than Trump. Whatever. Besides the point, he's going out there and he's saying that if you're opposing indoctrination in schools, you're big government. Which, by the way, if that is big government, I don't care. I'd say, okay, I'm proud to be big government then. Because if big government means you're using the government to do good, then what's the real problem there? But either way, it's ironic because he's supporting the big government indoctrination from big government schools, but you have to oppose that because big government is bad. The bottom line is you're getting it either way. You're going to get either the left using their power and mutilating the role of government in the process to enact their agenda and try to pass it off as something that's perfectly fine, legal, constitutional, whatever. Or you have actual competent right-wing leadership that goes out there and just squashes the left's agenda, like they've been too afraid to do for quite some time. So we could say DeSantis's Don't Say Gay or whatever bill is a good step in the right direction. I think it doesn't go far enough. I think most people should and would agree that it doesn't go far enough. It's like a remedial policy victory at best, but that's bad in Larry Hogan's view. And there's so many people and so many conservatives that think like this. It's not just like Larry Hogan, but it's a disaster. But so many people consistently fall victim to these principles that, again, don't exist because your own principles are leading to more indoctrination from, guess who? The government. So, yeah, exactly. So saying that the government is not allowed to teach certain things, which would technically lower and make the scope and size of the government smaller. No, that's completely bad. No, it's because he's serving the same agenda and he's just using these platitudes that have been used by the right for quite some time in order to gain support. And it's not going to work that way. It's not going to work. And I think a lot of people are sick of it. I think a lot of people are tired of the old worldview. A lot of people want actual leadership that goes out there and does something and protects our kids from this nonsense and keeps our streets safe and protects our country at every single turn that it can from threats at home or threats abroad without, obviously intervention that's unnecessary. But yeah, you see this here. It's just a big mess. And I found that just downright absurd. And I know a lot of people aren't buying into it, but still, it's something that I feel like I needed to touch on because it's so ridiculous. And I think Larry Hogan is somebody that we could just sit back here and have a good laugh at. So let's see. All right. 52% of the vote is in. So the Dem totals are dipping overall, it does seem. Washington added more votes to its total, and the percentage of votes in went down, which means there's more votes outstanding in Washington, as what would make sense, because Waukesha was having like a significantly higher turnout. The turnout in Waukesha also dipped overall. Winnebago County, the percentage of votes in dipped as well. So you're looking at this here, 52% of the vote is in, and the conservative candidates have gained a little bit there. They're not quite to 50. Will they get to 50? It's very possible. Looking at this, Milwaukee, 71% in. Madison, they moved it back to 65. So definitely a lot more votes left to count, really, for either side. But let's see. Funtime Freddy 420 says, I was on the DeSantis train for a while because I thought Trump would lose, but now I'm back in the Trump train due to his surge in harvesting plan. Well, I told people that he was going to do this because right after the midterms, he put on his Truth Social that he would do it. And nobody ever talked about it except for me. And now he goes out there and he says this. So it doesn't even matter who the nominee is. If the Republicans are unwilling to do this where it's legal and where it's necessary to do it to win, they're not going to win. It's very clear that the mechanics were the issue. Why did the polls underestimate Republicans this time? Well, it is indeed a turnout problem. That's the way it is. So, okay, I mean, it's like you have the opponent playing by completely different rules than you are willing to play by because of, I'm a principle. It's like, no, just go out there and do it. That's what you have to do or you're not going to win. Like, they have gotten really good at harvesting. They've gotten good at getting every ballot they possibly can get into the ballot box. You have to go out there and do the same or you can't win. It's a game of points, basically. Each ballot's a point. The more points you get, you win. So find a way to win. It's that simple. It's like first grade logic. It's pretty common sense. I mean, where was the enthusiasm for Biden? Where was the enthusiasm? But still, how many votes did he get? Even after we discuss the things we won't discuss, still probably a lot. More than any candidate in history. So you look at that and you say, how? Well, they did these things. You didn't find them ethical, but they were completely legal. So maybe we need to actually use them to our advantage and we'll actually start to win. I don't know. Just a thought. So Christopher Laurie says, did you see Sununu might run? He's fallen so far. New Hampshire actually further left because of him. Yeah. I really think that if he jumps in, that probably would only play a role within New Hampshire. Like, how would that affect the New Hampshire primary? That would be interesting. I don't think he'll jump in, though. I think he's probably going to run for governor. He could basically stay governor as long as he wants to. So I don't know why he wouldn't just stay governor. And if he jumps in, it's going to be to cause chaos in the New Hampshire primary. But like I said, the more candidates that you have in the race, the more it helps Donald Trump. They apparently have learned nothing from 2016, which is hilarious. They're just incompetent. They're dumb. And that'll work out to Trump's advantage, though. So we'll see what happens. But we will be talking about the recent Trump attack lines on Ron DeSantis at some point during the stream. We're 35 minutes in. They've counted over half the ballots. So we'll keep watching. Branch Covidian 19 says, any chance you'll cover the Chicago mayoral election next week? Lightfoot may be getting the boot. It's possible. I haven't really read up on it too much, but if it really hits the news and it's being talked about quite a bit, might as well spend some time and energy covering it. Michael Duggan says, Tim Pool said he's voting for Trump. Said Trump is the CEO and DeSantis is a COO on his show, which is surprising that he said that. I mean, Tim Pool is somebody that a lot of people say does not really have a lot of conviction, and it's pretty understandable given the fact that he has kind of changed his ideology over the years. You know, he started off as like a left-wing reporter, then kind of became like a Tulsi Gabbard fence-sitter type, and now he's like slowly being more like libertarian right, whatever. But I mean, you could say it's an interesting analogy. DeSantis is somebody who, like I said, is a decent governor. It does not always mean it's going to translate well at the national level. And I've said that for years now, ever since people were promoting him to be the nominee back in early 2021, when I said, I was kind of more open to the idea, if Trump doesn't run, DeSantis is probably the next best option. But you look at the fact that he's being propped up by the same special interests that Trump ran against in 2016. And like, those are the people that are supporting him initially, which means it's a very good chance that they're going to be in his cabinet. That's what you do in politics. You tend to reward your cabinet members, or you try to reward your initial day one supporters with cabinet positions or advisory roles. And that's also why Lindsey Graham is endorsing Trump, by the way. He's taking a gamble there, trying to, get in Trump's ear so he could subvert his agenda. We'll see if that happens. Hopefully it doesn't. But it's like, I really fail to see why people are trying to say, like, this guy is more anti-establishment than Trump. Like, he is a decent governor. His record in Congress is very murky. And at the national level, he's just going to be another run-of-the-mill conservative politician. He's more of a skilled politician, I will say that. He's somebody who speaks to the base better. I think he'd be more electable than some people give him credit for. But again, I still think that in the Rust Belt, I'm not going to even say he's dead on arrival, but I do think Trump is still more likely to win Pennsylvania than he is to win Wisconsin. But can Trump win a primary is another question, because Trump is older. He's not what he was back when he was 69 years old. He's 77, 78 years old. And it's understandable, or he will be by the time the primary season is over. And it's understandable that, he would still have a chance to be a decent leader, given the fact that Biden is going to be in his mid-80s by the time you see his first term be up or whatever. But it's like, you're looking at this and there's just a lot of subject matter to cover there. But Trump is still somebody who doesn't have necessarily the same stamina that he had back in the day. And then you have the RNC, you have the Republican apparatus. They're going to do what they can do to stop him. Conservative establishment media is all lined up behind DeSantis. It's very evident for anybody that's paid 1 ounce of attention. Even some of the original, Trump outlets like Drudge or Breitbart, whatever, that helped, prop up his rise back in 2016. They're more establishmentarian now than they were back then. And you look at a lot of these networks that were like I wouldn't say neo-never-Trumpers. They are, again, neo-never-Trumpers, but they were never-Trumpers back then. And then maybe they praised him during his presidency. Now they're just attacking him 24/7. So you have the whole GOP establishment propped up against Trump. Again, does he still have that dog in him? Does he still have that ability to counteract that at age 78 with his back, stacked up against the wall? He's going to have to be careful about how he navigates this, and we'll see what happens. But I will say that in terms of his recent attack lines, it's interesting to see what he says here. He says Florida was doing great before Ron DeSantis got there, which it's interesting to see that he calls him Ron DeSantis. Again, it's actually a high IQ insult, one could say. But at the same time, I don't think the average voter or even the average person in this chat knows what DeSantis refers to. It basically just means he's unholy. which is very intriguing there. It's a very, very high IQ insult, but it's going to fly over a lot of people's heads. And then he says people are fleeing from New York to Florida and other places so he blames New York for the reason why people are moving to Florida. And he says it's not because of DeSantis. And then he calls him DeSanctimonious again, which again is an interesting insult. I think more people know what that means. It means he's just a grandstander, basically. Then he says Rick Scott did great in Florida. He praised Charlie Crist, which again is very interesting given the fact that Crist ran against him in 2018, or not 2018, 2022 as a Democrat, even though Crist used to be a Republican or an independent or whatever. And then he says sunshine and ocean, very alluring. So he's saying that Florida's not doing well because of DeSantis. It's doing well because of Rick Scott, which also you could even say is a calculated move to get the support of Rick Scott. There have been these reports that Rick Scott is not on best terms with DeSantis. So getting the support of the previous governor, who might be able to go out there for you and say, no, I did these things that were great. I'm the reason why Florida is doing so well. It's not necessarily because of DeSantis. So Rick Scott could go out there and stump for Trump, and that could arguably bolster Trump's case, one could say. So you could say that that was a positive thing that he did. But at the same time, looking into this, it's like the base likes DeSantis. Maybe not like the diehard Trump 2024 people, but like your average voter likes both of them. That's going to be voting for Donald Trump. He could still get separation from DeSantis if he does what he has also done recently. He's also gone after who's backing him. He's gone after his congressional record. Like, these are good things that are going to help Trump against DeSantis, because he could basically say, you know what, you're a decent governor. I'm still holding onto that torch. Look what you did at the national level. You're just a politician. And that's a winning message against DeSantis. And if he focuses on all the other issues, attacks Biden, doesn't dwell on past grievances as much, that is the type of thing that could get Trump across the finish line with flying colors in 2024, in arguably both the primary as well as the general election. So, like I said, I'm not opposed to him attacking DeSantis. This whole war needs to, you got to rip the Band-Aid off now, because it's very evident DeSantis is going to jump in the race. And you got to get this settled quickly, because you don't want a divided party after a primary cycle that is long and brutal, because it will damage your chances in the general. You could still win, but you're going to be winning in spite of it. You're not going to be winning because of it. So we'll see what happens here. I find it very intriguing that he's still going out there. He's just going all out early, but I think some of the insults land better than others. Calling DeSantis like a pedophile or whatever because he was like getting drunk in college is not a good attack line. It's dishonest, doesn't land, doesn't work. Attacking DeSantis because he's being propped up by the GOP donor class, propped up by the establishment, is going to be in the corner in his campaign with a lot of these bad people. I mean, a lot of people that are currently paying a troll farm, basically, on Twitter, among other social media, to go out there and just relentlessly shill for this guy. They have all their group chats. They're all followed by his top advisors, namely Christina Pushaw, who is a diehard Ukraine shill, who is not a social conservative in many regards, given a lot of her past tweets, and said that her greatest night of her political life was when Zelensky won in Ukraine, and has ties to the WEF, has ties to all these different organizations that are globalists, that are no good. If she's going to be in his corner, if she's going to be the one pulling the strings, then no, there's no reason why I would ever vote for Ron DeSantis in a primary, especially at the national level. Doesn't matter how good of a governor you are. And like, these attack lines would land. They would land probably a little bit better than Ron DeSantis. I don't know. That's the way I see it, but we'll really just have to see how it plays out. I also want DeSantis to respond. Again, if he doesn't respond past a certain point, you could say he's being a skilled politician, but to the average voter in Iowa that's going to be voting in 11 months, that kind of is a sign of weakness. It really is. It's like, oh, Trump's going out there, he's attacking him with probably insults that are not landing as well as his insults back in 2016. 2015, 2016, right? The insults are not landing as well. Some of them are funny still. I'm not saying some of Trump's rhetoric has been amazing in terms of when he's on message talking about policy. Like, yeah, he's really solid in that regard. But either way, if DeSantis is not willing to actually like respond effectively and efficiently to them, it's going to definitely add up in terms of the negativity points that he's going to be getting among these voters he's going to need to win. Because he's going to need part of Trump's base to defect from Trump to win. And you have a lot of the GOP that's over Trump. They want to move on. They prefer DeSantis. Some of them are more well-meaning than others. The DeSantis heads that are like, oh, I'll prefer Nikki Haley to Trump. They're just losers. Their opinions shouldn't even matter. A lot of them are paid shills that you see on social media. And they're just either that or they have TDS. There's no other way to chalk it up. But then you have the people that are like, oh, DeSantis is like, he's like Trump without the drama. He's like Trump without a lot of these, bad things. And it's like, is he really? I mean, you look at him on foreign policy, trade, you look at who's in his corner. Like, I'm not a fan of everyone in Trump's corner. What makes you think that DeSantis's corner is like gonna be a whole lot better? People will say I don't give Trump criticism. I do quite a bit, actually. That's probably the reason why I'm not paid by him. I'm not on his payroll. It's probably the reason why I guess you would say I'm not a part of his campaign, but I'm just gonna just tell the truth, whatever. And that's the way it goes. But I'm not a fan of everything Trump does or everybody in his corner. But the reasons why these DeSantis heads are attacking Trump, it's usually over things that don't matter. They're like, Trump needs to go back to 2016. I'm not voting for him, even though they didn't even support him back in 2016. And then they're like, oh, Trump insulted his primary opponent. He's awful. I'll vote for Biden over. I mean, obviously not everybody's saying that, but some people will. And it's like, no. And I agree that I'm not the biggest fan of DeSantis. I don't know what that means. I think Meatball Ron is funny. He's not going to use that. I don't even know if he came up with that, whatever. But he'll find a nickname. I think he's still working on a nickname. But either way, it is true. DeSantis is not Rubio. He's not Jeb Bush. The base likes him, which is interesting. So we'll go back to Wisconsin, where Daniel Kelly has overtaken Jennifer Doro. It does seem as if more of Dane County is coming. It's 85% in. We're still waiting on votes out of Washington, Ozaukee, a lot of the rural areas. But it does seem as if Kelly and Doro are going neck and neck. 63% of the vote is in. Whichever one of those two ends up getting in second place or getting more votes than the other, they are going to advance to the general with Janet Prstacewicz. And judging from the way that things are going, if they don't even get a majority of the votes in this round, they're going to probably need to go out there and get their turnout up a little bit. And I know Ozaukee's a red county. Nothing's out of Ozaukee. Decent population center there. Racine is now in. There's a lot of the Driftless area that's not quite in. The Driftless area is voting for Prstacewicz, even though you see a lot of people there not voting. And people are like, oh, well, Trump needs to not get involved in elections anymore. But they don't understand that part of the reason why you saw ridiculously good turnout for Republicans in the Driftless area in 2016 and 2020 was because Trump went out there and he campaigned. He got those voters out. So you're going to need to find a way to get these voters out, whether you have to energize the base more or you're going to have to go out there and learn how to reach these voters and make them vote, basically. You're going to have to do what the Democrats do in the inner cities, but in these places, because they chase their ballots. Republicans don't chase their ballots. They just throw out the same 1980s messaging and just pray for the best, and that does not really get you an election victory in the year 2023 of all years. It's not even 2016 anymore. It's 2023. New election system, not a fan of it. There's a lot of things that need to change. So let's see. Alex Kuchar says, college Dems at my campus today, my democracy. Many such cases of that. Based Cato says, you're a shitlib. You know it's a shitlib take when they make ad hominem attacks on a bill. with just its name rather than what the bill actually says. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. It's not something that I'm going to pay too much attention to in terms of the grand scheme of things. The content does matter. Of course, it's like, oh, well, the left is saying the bill does this, this, and this. It's like, yeah, we're kind of past that. I was like, how many months ago was that news? Like 8 is what it is. Candace Gertrude Flynn says, have you heard about Newsmax being canceled by DirecTV? Yes, I have. I don't really have a strong opinion on it. I mean, it is like another right-wing network, but they're kind of like diet Fox News at this point anyways. Let's see. Gerald Armstrong says, thoughts on Biden and Kyiv. I found it amusing they used the air sirens as a political stunt. A CNN correspondent said he hadn't heard bombs in days. I mean, that's what they got to do. They got to increase the public support for the war effort, and it's not really working. And I feel like a lot of the people that said we shouldn't be getting involved from the get-go, you know, even a lot of people on the right were diehard Ukraine fans. Some of them didn't like what I had to say about it. I think a lot of people now agree that my take has been vindicated this whole time. And how much money are we giving these people? It's a ridiculous amount. You know, I've critiqued foreign aid for quite some time to a lot of different countries, and just the idea of foreign aid as a whole. Like, we've given Ukraine more, I guess you would say double, than what we've given everybody else over the past year or so. Just doing the math from what I understand. Maybe not exactly double, but it's been a ridiculous amount. Stephen Kanizik says, as a Trump 24 supporter who still likes DeSantis, I'm concerned about all the DeSantis supporters not caring about Trump potentially taking DeSantis down like he took Jeb down in 2016. Well, it'll be interesting to see how DeSantis fares. He's not like the best debater. He's not that skilled, like, in terms of his rhetoric. The guy, arguably you could say, lost the debate to Gillum, or was like 50-50 with him. He didn't destroy Charlie Crist. He won the debate. He didn't destroy him, though. And Trump is not what he was rhetorically, one could say, especially going off the cuff. But he also hasn't gone off the cuff in a while. So it's like, I don't know how this is going to play out. There's a lot that we just don't know. And we got a long way to go. Let's see. Okay, wait. Any new developments here? Doesn't really seem like it. We're still waiting on several large red counties to report their votes. And Madison is 85%, in Milwaukee 71%. So Nathaniel says, hey there, Rep. Hope you're doing well. Out of curiosity, I'm currently moving my way up in my county's party as a ranking member. Well, that's good news. Are there any recommendations you'd give me? Also, Kelly or Doro for Wisconsin Supreme Court. I mean, I don't really honestly have a horse in this race. It does seem as if Doro has backing in both camps in terms of the establishment and some of the grassroots as well. She's been endorsed by the very staunch conservative justice that's leaving the court. And Kelly is somebody who did lose an election in 2020, but it was on the same day as the Democrat primary in the state. He's more proven than Doro. Doro may have supported like getting rid of cash bail in the past and some of these liberal policies, even though it does seem like she has kind of walked it back. So I don't know. Let's see. So I don't really have any recommendations. I guess you would say just keep doing what you're doing. If you're working your way up in your county party, that's a good thing. And I think a lot of people need to get involved. A lot more people need to start doing that. Get actually in the political ring. Go out there and just do it. I mean, you have to climb the ranks. That's how we're going to take over the Republican Party. You're going to have more solid people in leadership positions that understand how politics works, that really understand how to navigate the political system. So, yeah. Christopher Laurie says, if there are any New England states that can flip red, which one do you think will? Honestly, I think it might be Maine or even Connecticut. Vermont and Massachusetts, I don't think will ever go red. Probably Maine. Maine, you could even say New Hampshire, just based off of demography. Connecticut is very establishmentarian, one could say, very, very liberal on social issues. I really think that Vermont is obviously going to be gone forever outside of like these liberal Republicans. I'll put it the governorship. Same thing with Massachusetts. Maybe Rhode Island, maybe in the far future. But I don't know. We'll have to see. A lot can change. But culturally, the Northeast is an anomaly. Even you have these rural areas that are voting blue or just not really red enough compared to how you would expect given racial and educational demography. So, Dollar for Dollar says, how should I approach a run for the school board? I'm not entirely sure. I would probably actually just get involved and contact people that are, I guess you would say, people maybe that have ran in the past, just read up on it. I don't know exactly how to run for local office. I mean, it is something that I might do in the future, maybe not necessarily local office, but run for like state rep or something. It's something that I would definitely consider doing, but I'm not entirely sure. I would just research it a little bit more. Okay, everybody in chat is spamming JQOF. I don't know what that is. It's just kind of seems annoying, actually. Seems like a raid of sorts. Doesn't really make any sense to me. So let's just time out some of these people. Just time them out. It's annoying. And the troll. Where are the moderators? Where are the mods? What are they doing? I haven't seen any mods in chat in a while. But whatever. Nothing seemed to change on the election board. So, yeah. But let's see. Thoughts on David Cicilline, the representative out of Rhode Island's 1st district, is retiring. So there's going to be another special election there. I don't know who's going to exactly go for it on the Republican side. It's basically like a D+20 seat. It doesn't seem like it's going to flip regardless who the nominee is, but it'll be interesting to see who they put up. But I seriously encourage people to get involved in these state parties. I mean, especially these parties that have conventions. Like, they almost got rid of John Hogan up in North Dakota by convention. Like, that was impressive. That was very impressive. And it's all because people are infiltrating these parties. They're getting the right people in the right positions of power. And what exactly are they doing? They are changing the way the party operates. They're changing the ideology. They're changing the way they fight, and they're able to still maintain the connections necessary to get enough donations, to have enough funding to win. If they're able to do that, they're going to take it. They're going to take it pretty far. They will. So, seems like we're 67% of the way through counting these votes. Dem totals are still steadily dropping. They're down to 53.8. We don't have any votes in out of Ozaukee. We don't have any votes in there. But a lot of these driftless area counties, depending on how the rest of the votes go, it's not looking too good for turnout in these places. I know it's a primary election, but you got to get the base out in these places. If you're not able to, you're going to be screwed, and the state's going to be screwed as a result. And that's not a good thing. Exactly says Vermont is such a weird state. Will vote fiscally conservative in their own interests against taxes and environmental regulations, but never socially. Well, there a lot of people up in Vermont are basically just hippies from New York that have moved up there. That's kind of why the state has gotten more and more liberal over the years, and that's the way it is. But I really do believe that they're not really that fiscally conservative. I mean, you could say that they are fiscally conservative in terms of like, oh, Phil Scott wants to cut the budget a little bit here and there, which I don't even know if he does. But they're very much in line with Bernie Sanders' agenda economically, so I don't know if that's entirely accurate. For some reason, Kelly is winning in Brown County. So he's winning up in Green Bay, but the Driftless area not looking too good. So I don't know what votes are left in some of these counties. I don't think we really will know. But either way, this could be a turnout issue depending on the final result, depending on what they do between now and April to actually get enough voters voting. So Sam Matson says, how are Dems getting a combined 82% in Dane when Tony Evers only got 79? Probably because of turnout. This is probably an election where Democrats in Madison, where you already have a usual high baseline turnout, are turning out in decent numbers. And having two Democrat candidates, one that does well with like the far left bloc that you see in Madison, like that's probably what's explaining it. Of course, there's 11% left. We don't know how that's going to go, but that's probably why they're doing better than Evers did. And again, like I said, this is just a primary. I wouldn't read too much into it compared to the end result, but it's still showing that Republicans have a decent way to go in terms of overall turnout to get that turnout necessary to win. So Branch Covidian 19 says, do you think it's worth it for me to get involved in the Chicago GOP? I'd love to move, but I'm stuck here, unfortunately. I mean, you could try, but it's not like you're really going to make any serious change. Maybe you could work within your state party, which I'm sure there's offices for that somewhere in the Chicago area, at least I would hope. And, definitely you could help work on some congressional campaigns in the region. There's always going to be political opportunities for you in blue areas for the most part. Maybe not in like Massachusetts or Hawaii, but if you are in like a state like Illinois or California or New York, they still have a decent amount of Republicans there that have Republican local officials, Republican county officials, Republican congressional districts within, half an hour drive or so. So that's what I would suggest if you want to get involved in Chicago GOP politics. Really depends where in Chicago you live too. But if you're like in the western suburbs, you probably buy some competitive congressional districts for sure. 752 viewers. Like the stream. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. I haven't checked the sub count during the stream yet, but it does seem like we've gained a little bit over the past couple of weeks or so, which is good. So people are back and they're paying attention. But like the stream, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications as well. And if you have any super chats to keep the conversation going, feel free to send them, and I will read them as they do come in. But we're 69% of the way in, and we have like 7 or 8 counties that have not reported any votes whatsoever. And I don't know when they're actually going to report them. But we're going to wait and see. This is just I guess you would say an expectation. This can change throughout the night. But I don't know how many exact voters have voted. That's why you saw counties like Washington say 95 or 91. Then it went back down to like 70 something. Now it's back at 95. I still believe there's probably more votes there, but either way, turnout is an issue. You got to get that turnout up as high as you possibly can, or you are going to have a lot of problems come election day. That's the way it is. So it does seem in terms of Kelly or Doro may be able to win, given the fact that Ozaki's not there. But there's still a lot of rural counties that are likely going to break for Daniel Kelly, given how some of these counties have broken in terms of the Kelly versus Doro vote. I mean, Doro does seem to be doing well in southeastern Wisconsin. That's expected. She'll probably take Ozaki. She might even take Sheboygan County. That's still up in the air. I don't know if she will. Dodge County as well as a possible county she could take. But the rest of the counties are going to heavily favor Daniel Kelly that have not yet reported on this map. So we'll see. We'll see. But I really think Kelly is favored right now. And that I will say. So let's see what chat is saying. DeSanctis is a lame nickname. I mean, yeah, I would kind of agree that it's not really that effective. I think it is actually intelligent if you understand what DeSanctis means in Latin. I don't even know. I mean, I'm assuming Trump does know that, but who knows? Why are you so-called red-wing? I don't know what red-wing populism is. I'm assuming you mean right-wing populism. Right-wing populists hyper-fixated on culture war nonsense. This message is going to help you win. Well, it seems like the people that actually engage in the culture war in some capacity or another, like Glenn Youngkin in Virginia, Zeldin up in New York, DeSantis even in Florida, they're the people that are overperforming the most in these elections. I mean, the people that have enough backing to win while still fighting on cultural issues, not caving, not stabbing the base in the back, those are the people that are winning elections. This whole, we're going to talk about the deficit, we're going to talk about taxes, whatever. It's like, okay, fine, you support lower taxes. I don't support higher taxes, but that message alone is not going to help you win. What do you have to say about healthcare? What do you have to say about all these issues that people want an answer to? You're going to have to answer directly to these people. Donald Trump back in 2016 did a better job of this than probably any Republican has really ever done, including Donald Trump in 2020, by the way. And it paid dividends. Trump DeSantis 2024 says, someone tried to tell me this was a blue wave tonight. Is this true? It's not a blue wave. You have one congressional district in a safe blue state where Democrats overperform. You have a primary in Wisconsin, which is an ancestrally Dem state. Primaries are typically going to favor in terms of turnout, the state that is more ancestrally one way or another. And that is true. Whether it's Georgia for the Republicans or Wisconsin for the Dems, maybe not as much. But of course you're going to see Democrats run probably a couple points ahead of where they may in the general, which is not a sure thing. But either way, I don't think that it's enough to classify itself as a blue wave election. It's just like you have two off-year like special elections, basically. One is a special, one's a primary. So while I will say I'm not going to be convinced that Kelly or Doro is going to defeat Protasiewicz, I think it's possible. But I think that we'll be able to determine a little bit more about the national environment come April 4th. And that much is true. Sam Madsen said Mark Ronchetti caved hard on abortion and ended up doing worse than his Senate run in 2020, despite that being a federal race. And this is true. And I didn't expect him to do that bad. I didn't really know if he caved that hard on abortion. Obviously, there's 30-some governor's races. I didn't see what every candidate had to say about everything. But I will say that caving does not help you with anybody. It doesn't. The left's still going to hate you. This whole pivoting thing, like the primary campaign, of course, people are going to pivot to the right. And in the general, they're going to pivot back to like the center or even the left in some cases. It's just honestly more authentic if somebody's going to stay the same way with the same messaging the entire time. Even if their primary messaging is a little bit, I guess you would say, weaker, which I'm not saying it should be, but I'm saying caving and changing the messaging, it doesn't really, I don't think it helps you. Like every candidate that lost a close race in 2022, you saw a massive difference between the primary and the general campaigns. I don't think it really helped them. I really don't. I mean, you could even say some issues should not be talked about, fine, but like caving on abortion and basically saying like, oh, we support pro-choice, whatever, like you saw Ronchetti do, it really didn't seem to help him. Same thing goes for LePage up in Maine, who won 2 elections in which he vastly ran to the right of his 2022 campaign, which he lost by a sizable margin, 10 points or so. The young overwhelmingly disagree with you, and they're not becoming more conservative as they age. Well, why exactly is that? What exactly does the Republican Party have to offer? You're going to sit up here and say that my agenda is not politically viable. You don't even know what my agenda is, first of all. That's beside the point. But I will say that the Republicans don't really know how to effectively target voters in certain demographics they could be doing better with. Young voters, for example. They do exactly nothing to address the decadence of our current state in our society. And as a result, they don't inspire young voters to turn out for them. They don't. There's a lot of issues they could be talking about that probably may seem a little bit unorthodox to talk about to the average boomer, but if they, toss it in here and there, they're probably going to be doing better with young voters. Absolutely. Josh Hawley does a much better example of running a campaign that can energize younger voters than most Republicans do, because he talks about actual issues that are affecting the younger generations, especially more so than they're affecting the older generations who don't exactly care. So there's a lot of, I guess you would say, younger voters who might have conservative tendencies that just don't vote or vote left for like economic reasons or whatever because they don't really understand how the economy works, but you potentially could be winning. But the Republican Party is just dumb. They don't know how to effectively target them. They'd rather go after the suburban women that they're never going to win back instead of actually trying to grow their coalition and make it a coalition that is sustainable for years and years to come. This is true. Less pandering and more like actually doing something that can work and get things done. So 72% of the vote is in. We have Sheboygan, 57% in. Doro is winning Sheboygan County, but Kelly leads by 12,000. I think Kelly's going to win this. Probably. So let's see. Max says, is there anything you could reasonably foresee Trump doing or saying that would make you actually consider supporting DeSantis in a primary? I don't know. I really would not exactly say that there is. And there's a chance that he completely just implodes or whatever, and I just don't enthusiastically support either candidate, or I would be a little agnostic about it. I'm still voting for either one in a general. I'm still going to be voting. Let's say DeSantis beats Trump in the nomination process. I'd reluctantly vote for him in a general. Obviously I'm going to be more enthusiastic if his campaign is run in a more America First manner, which again, given his current advisors, I don't have hope for that at all. I'll support whoever the nominee is, assuming it's either Trump or DeSantis. However, let's say Trump completely just implodes whatever, I'm probably just going to be agnostic on the primary process. And I think a lot of people already are. So we'll see. But what would you have to say? DeSantis would have to go out there, tell all the people propping him up to go screw themselves, basically. And then Trump would have to be the guy that just keeps dropping the ball at every single possible opportunity that he can. That's what would basically get me to support DeSantis over Trump, which is likely not entirely going to happen or doesn't even have a chance at taking place in the first place. But that's the way I see it. Let's see. Alex P. says, if caving to the left worked, then O'Day would have won. Exactly. And this is the takeaway that they get from the midterms. It's Trump bad. We need the old establishment GOP. We need people like the Bushes. We need people like Joe O'Day, who, by the way, almost lost Lauren Boebert her congressional district. People will blame her personality or whatever for her underperformance, but it's very clear that when you look at it, she won that district still. He lost it by a couple points. So I can't exactly sit back here and say that, oh, it's always the MAGA people's fault or whatever. No, it's not. It's the establishment's fault. They don't exactly want to be team players here. They don't. And as a result, they lose. They're willing to leave people in the dust, have people lose if they're not exactly the right type of Republican. The left does not do this. That's the main problem. The left will stick with John Fetterman, Katie Hobbs, all these horrible leaders on their side. But if Republicans, support somebody who might ask questions about a certain, election 2 years ago, then, oh, well, they're the worst person ever. We can't nominate this person, even if they don't mention it at all in the general election. So, yeah, I'm kind of fed up about that. But they are not learning their lesson, but we have to keep working at it. You're not going to exactly see everything transform overnight. This is not something that is going to happen maybe even in the next 10 years. You could say we're losing our country. We're not going to exactly be able to take it back in time, whatever. It is, well, at the same time, we have to keep getting the ball rolling. We have to keep moving. You're going to have setbacks. It's not going to be in a straight line. It's not going to happen overnight. It might take decades. It could very well take decades in order for us to actually have competent leadership in this country. It's going to get worse before it's going to get better, and this is the way it's going, and there's nothing else that we can do. You might say that sounds blackpilling, whatever, I'm being a doomer. I don't really think so. I think that it's just very evident that you will see setbacks, and people need to accept that. And the more setbacks we have, it just, I guess you will say it'll make the end result even better at the end of the day. But let's see. Exactly. Says, what does Hawley say that helps him with the youth? Well, I think he actually talks about a lot of things in the realm of self-improvement that actually will have the potential to resonate with younger voters. He also is somebody that economically is more pragmatic. You have a lot of the people in the, electobro sphere, the establishment Republicans that are like, oh, he's a socialist, whatever. It's like, no, he's just more pragmatic. He understands that big business is just as much of a problem as big government in some cases, and that's all true. And Hawley gets it. He gets it on social media. That's a big thing. And that's the one thing that really does tend to unite us, is everybody is addicted to their phones. Everybody is always on social media. They're always on the internet 24/7, especially in the younger generation. You're going to have to reach those voters. You will. I mean, that's the way it is. You look at the epidemics of video games where people are playing them for how many hours a week on average. It's ridiculous. You have the pornography epidemic. Hawley's talked about all that and more. I mean, I'm not exactly saying that he's 100% perfect on every single issue or whatever, but I'm saying you need more people going out there and talking about these issues that do actually affect the youth and actually want to do something about it. I mean, this is true. And they may not exactly be issues that the boomers care about or whatever, but it just doesn't matter. You're going to have to do what you have to do to build a large enough coalition that's sustainable to win. And that's the way it goes. So Anthony Williams says, if DeSantis runs and loses to Trump, would he still be strong enough for 28, or would he become Ted Cruz? He could be. I think a lot of people, if it gets ugly, they'll view him a little bit more negatively. And I think that he basically views the time window closing, which I don't think is always true. Like, he could get behind Trump now and support him and actually work overtime to ensure that his campaign is like whatever he views it as, smoothly run or whatever, or help him out or whatever, maybe even become his VP, and then have the mandate for 2028. Instead, he is playing with his political life right now. Whether it pans out in his favor or not is beside the point. What we do know is that DeSantis very well could lose to Donald Trump in the primary. And what would happen then? Well, it's very evident that his political career would be all but over. I mean, his approval rating's going to dip a little bit. If Trump's leading the party, yeah, he might get behind Trump, support him for his election, and then maybe Trump would like forgive him, whatever. I don't know. But either way, it's a bad look. If he does run against Trump, it's going to be ugly. It's already getting ugly pretty quickly. He's going to have to start responding, or he just will probably not be able to win the primary if he's just going to sit back here and say nothing, which again may be strategic for now, but when he's actually in the political ring, he's going to have to defend himself, whatever. Who knows? But what I will say is that there's a very good chance he would just be relegated to like a Ted Cruz role. And if Trump really is able to become a strong primary candidate at the end of the day, go out there and defeat Ron DeSantis and defeat Joe Biden to become president again, yeah, I don't necessarily believe that DeSantis would hold the torch. I think it may be Trump's VP, whoever he chooses, or potentially somebody else at this point. I don't know. We'll see. Let's see. Yes, man says, has anyone really ever been far, even has decided to use even go? What does that even mean? I don't know what that means. That doesn't seem like that sounds like a Joe Biden sentence right there. Sisyphus says, I'm in my early 20s. Republicans don't talk about college debt, costs, or housing prices, two economic issues that extremely affect our age range. Well, I don't have any debt. And I'm very grateful for that, but a lot of people do have a lot of debt, and it's a major problem. Like the average cost of attending like a very prestigious, you could say, public university back in the 1970s, even when you adjust for inflation, it's like what, $2,000 a semester or something like that. There's no reason why it's gotten so out of control. And obviously, I'm not saying that we need to go out there and make it free government or whatever, like the far left wants to do. I'm not saying we have to forgive. We definitely do not need to be forgiving student debt, at least on taxpayer dollars, because that would not be viable electorally either. But the truth is that we have to give them something. If you're not giving them something, you're going to lose. Like, you have to be pragmatic about this. And there's a lot of issues that you could easily address that probably would benefit you among the Zoomer electorate, whatever. I'm not saying you're going to win them, because there are a lot of Zoomers that are very socially far left, and they're never going to vote for you, even if they agree with you on the economy, whatever. But there is a lot of room to grow that we can grow on, and we're going to have to go out there and make it happen. And changing the culture is a big step. It's not just electoral politics. You're going to have to change the cultural institutions. You're going to have to basically change the way that society works as much as possible with everything stacked against you, which I still think it's possible because we have a lot of bright minds. We do. We have a lot of people that are in good shape, good physical shape, good mental shape. This is why the left fears self-improvement so much, is because you have a lot of people, mainly young men, who are able to actually take control over their lives. And when you control your life, instead of being submissive to the government, the corporate, whatever, then you're going to become somebody who is able to chart their own path. And you have more people doing this, well, they're going to be unstoppable. Physically, mentally, whatever. They're going to be able to use mental gymnastics on a debate stage, for example, or, whatever. That's pretty much all it comes down to. That's why the left fears like self-improvement and things like that. Why do you think Andrew Tate is sitting in a prison right now? You think it's actually because they care that he may have done something wrong? He probably didn't do anything there. Like, all the women that were involved in that whole thing have pretty much come out and say that he did nothing wrong. But he's sitting in a prison right now. Why do you think that is? It's because he's a threat to the system. That's why. And I'm not going to say I agree with every single life choice that he's ever made, whatever. But the stuff the left attacks him for are because he tells the truth about a lot of things. Because he's actually somebody that has a lot of good quotes. He's somebody that's seen as like a role model to a lot of young men. He's teaching them to be successful. He's teaching them to be confident. He's teaching them to be normal 20 years ago. And that's why they don't like him. And that's pretty much it. So, let's see. Sam Madsen says, also all the furthest right members of the Minnesota legislature outperformed Jensen in their districts. Not surprised. And it's little things like that that are also daggers in this whole narrative. So Max says Hawley has the best voting record in the Senate if you break it down. Good speaker and has the presidential look. Yeah, I mean, anything that you look at his record and you disagree with it, it's basically nitpicking that applies to literally every other single person in politics today. So Buck Hunter 431 says, I'm a Nebraska Republican. In your opinion, is Deb Fischer a good senator, or should I vote for someone else in the primary? I don't really think a primary challenger is going to mount that would have a chance at being successful, but it doesn't really seem like she's anything special either. Exactly says, I don't know if I agree with about the issues with young people. You are right, but they don't realize the source of their issues. They won't give up hookup culture. Well, there are things that obviously we have to change within the culture, and that's also what I said, but there's plenty of room to grow. Like, how many people are actually getting involved in that? It's much less people than you would initially anticipate. Look at the numbers. You talk about hookup culture, for example. Like, you have a record of people like ages, like 18 to 24 who are like not having sex despite rampant cultural degeneracy, this like hookup culture, whatever. And it's like, okay, well, if you look into that, then clearly you have like a little, I guess you would say, disconnect there. And of course, this is not because, they're becoming like more religious or whatever, which that'd be a good thing if they're like getting married and they want to have kids, whatever, they're waiting till marriage, but they're just not. And this is kind of, I guess, a problem with the whole like isolationist culture. I don't know. But who knows? Maybe Hawley could like speak to that or somebody like that. I don't know. But either way, something has got to give with the Zoomer generation. And the turnout among like Zoomer white men in particular is probably abysmal, and it could be a lot higher than it currently is. And if you increase those turnout, which way do you think those people are going to be voting? I mean, let's be real here. So Nick H says, how would Rufus do with the black vote? I don't know. He'd probably win 99% of it because Rufus is such an electoral juggernaut. It's insane. But yeah, let's check the election. 81% of the vote is in. Nothing out of Ozaki. Milwaukee, 75%. Dane's up to 93%. So, I don't know. We have more votes remaining that haven't yet to be tallied. And a lot of the votes left are more likely than not going to be in smaller counties, except for whatever is left out of the county of Milwaukee, which probably is going to overwhelmingly favor Prostatsewicz, which if that's the case, she might take a majority if you combine her with Mitchell, which is not a good thing. Obviously, just a primary. Don't read too much into it, but still, long way to go. Ban TikTok. I mean, that'd be a first step. I mean, like, it is a major issue because you have a lot of people, they wake up like at probably like, 3 p.m. and then they browse TikTok for like an hour. And it's just like, no, it's a disaster. Like, I don't know if banning it outright is going to be that feasible because VPNs exist and things like that. But either way, there has to be some form of social media regulation that we can do that would, I guess, lessen the effects of it on the younger generations. And of course, the old like guard of the conservative movement's going to come in and say, you can't touch that. It's big gooberment or whatever. And it's just like, it's more about survival. If the founding fathers who wrote the Constitution could exactly see the damage that social media could cause on a population, I mean, they probably would have written the Constitution extremely differently. So, let's see. Nick H says, I'm starting to think it's impossible to improve on Trump rural margins in the Rust Belt in the presidential election. I disagree with that. I really do. I mean, even like Youngkin did better than Trump in the rurals in Virginia. I think Trump is still the best candidate to turn out those voters, but I think that there's a lot of room for improvement. Even in 2020, I mean, you look at the swing map and you see there that there was a big shift to the right in like the Driftless area in Wisconsin, even some parts of rural Michigan. Let's see. Sam Madsen says, does any swing state have a decent GOP? Seriously. North Carolina, maybe. The thing is that they don't. And that's a problem because that's where you need to win a presidential election. You're going to have to do well in Wisconsin, which their GOP is not even as bad as the others. You're going to have to win Pennsylvania. Awful. Michigan, be good to have. You don't have to win it. Awful. I mean, Florida, you could say, but they're not a swing state anymore. Texas' GOP is relatively competent. There's some bad people in it, but there's also a lot of good people. And that's not really a swing state. And hopefully it won't be, but something actually has to change regarding immigration to make sure that it won't be. I'm not exactly 100% a doomer. It's going to be gone for good, but I'm also not somebody that's going to be an optimist either. I think we have to work for it. In more ways than one per se. I think that you look at, Georgia, awful, Arizona, some like based people, but you don't really have the most competent apparatus. The new guy is going to be better than Ward, which is a good thing. Hopefully. I mean, a lot of people, even people that are kind of like more establishment, agree that the new guy is going to be better than Ward. He'll be more competent for sure, which is all that matters. It's not even the ideology. It's about the ability to win, your pure competence, understanding the mechanics. That's how you win, first and foremost. But Michigan's new chair is a disaster. And, I mean, nobody in that race was really capable of being solid. But if Trump wins Michigan in 2024, it's going to be entirely in spite of the Michigan party leadership there, 100% in spite of it. A history guy says, I'm a native Missourian and I'm a big fan of Hawley. I have some Dem friends who like some of his rhetoric, and I was wondering what his margin of victory would be. Also, keep up the great work. Love your channel. Well, thank you. I think that he's probably going to run maybe a few points behind the nominee because of the fact that it is like a down ballot election in Missouri. You'll see some down ballot lag. Like when Trump won in 2016, like Eric Greitens only got by a couple of points. Same thing with, I believe, Blunt there in the Senate race. I think Hawley would win by, I don't know, let's say Trump wins it, or DeSantis, or whoever the nominee is wins it by like 17. I think Hawley will win it by like, it depends who the candidate is, but if the Dems put up somebody that could have like a tiny bit of like grifter crossover appeal, maybe he'll win by like 14, but either way he's going to win. Justin in Time History says, do you think Andy Biggs will run for Senate in 2024 and win? I don't know. I'm not entirely sure if he's going to run. People said he would run last time. He never really stepped in the race, so we'll have to see who they put up. But if it is a three-way race, we have a wide open door to take that seat. So we better not drop the ball there. Nick H says, I'm worried we blew our chance in Michigan. I mean, like, I'm not entirely sure that we were really going to have much of a chance anyways in 2024, but we'll monitor the political climate. You can win despite bad state party leadership. It happens all the time. But still, we have a long, long way to go. And we have more trolls in chat that I just don't understand why. There we go. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Let's see. Let's go back to the results here. Yeah, 46.1 plus 7.4. So she's ahead by a good 7 points, or both of the Dems combined over the Republicans combined. And now we have Ozaukee County, 22% of the way in. Doro is gaining in Ozaukee. It's hard to believe that Washington and Ozaukee have so few votes compared to Waukesha. Like, I know they're smaller counties, but like Washington, I think gave like Trump a net like 60 some thousand votes or something. Maybe not that ridiculous, but it was like 40,000 votes there alone. So seeing that just be decreased significantly, which again, I know it's a smaller electorate, it's a lower turnout election. I'm aware, but I don't know, maybe a tabulation error, but that's beside the point. Shout out to Fairly Odd Politics. Thank you for the 5. Thank you for the 5. Let's see. Decision Desk called it for Kelly a few minutes ago. Yeah, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. It's very likely that he's going to win at this point. Very likely. So, yeah, we'll just have to see. This is going to be an election that will likely be very close on April 4th. I'm not exactly the most optimistic about it. I'm not going to sit here and be a total doomer about it either. It doesn't really seem like Republicans are going to be super favored at this point, but at the same time, it doesn't seem like the Democrats are going to run away with it, but Republicans are going to have to work for it. You saw that there was a report that came out probably a few weeks ago that showed Republicans like raise zero for this race. Democrats raised like a bunch of money, but they failed to understand that most of the conservative spending for this election has come from outside sources. So I don't know if that's necessarily an indicator of how things are really going to shake out come April 4th, but we'll have to see. Trump DeSantis 2024 says, who do you see winning Pennsylvania between Biden and DeSantis if Trump endorses DeSantis? Also, another thing to clear up, DeSantis doesn't support fracking in Florida. However, he supports it in the Rust Belt. Well, it doesn't matter because you're still going to see those advertisements with those sound bites. Obviously, there's explanations for a lot of different things in politics, but just because you say, I don't support fracking once, well, there you go. It's going to be used against you, especially because there's a lot of them. You know, Trump didn't really support offshore drilling in Florida, but wasn't really a tagline. But if DeSantis is anti-fracking, you'll see those outside groups clip it and put it up on those airwaves in Pennsylvania. It's not exactly going to help him with voters. It's not. I do believe that Pennsylvania probably goes for Biden against DeSantis. I think Trump could win it. We still are a long way to go between now and the election day for me to make a prediction. But you saw what happened there in the midterms. It was a total disaster. Republicans really need to get a turnout apparatus going or they're not going to be able to go out there and win. They're just not. So, let's see. Yeah, even Fetterman had to backtrack exactly. And I'm not saying that he would have probably lost if he hadn't, but it would have likely been closer. And obviously, as a Democrat, being non-committal or not supporting it is different than as a Republican, because you're going to have to go and make sure that you can energize people that are going to be voting for you, because a lot of those workers that are working in fracking probably are not going to be voting on only that issue. They care about cultural issues. They're culturally conservative, whatever. But we'll see. Simon says, what can be done at a national state level to protect kids from grooming in schools in general? Well, you're going to have the DeSantis legislation, but on steroids, statewide and ideally nationwide. You have a lot of people that are like, get rid of the Department of Education. And I get it. But at the same time, it could easily be used against our opposition nationwide as easily as we could, get rid of it. And then what are you going to do? Just cede the entire issue? Like, there's no reason why kids in Los Angeles should be learning about this stuff either. Like, I know it's Los Angeles, but this whole national divorce thing, which is something I kind of did want to touch on because MTG talked about it recently, and she's brought it up before, I think. It just hit the airwaves again because of it, and, she has basically everybody talking about it. It's not something that's feasible or viable, and it's not something that we should strive for. It would be a total disaster, and the left would never allow it to happen. Yes, I understand that it might sound good in theory, but it's not something that's feasible, and you're giving up our country. We fought for this country. We fought, tooth and nail to achieve manifest destiny, and you're going to be giving it away and ceding all of the cultural control and institutions to these people. You might be able to, live in the middle of nowhere in Montana or whatever, and that's great. But at the end of the day, they want to control you. They're going to come after you regardless. I mean, we've seen people try this throughout history. Didn't really work out too well for them. So, yeah, national divorce doesn't work. We should not strive for it. We got to fight for this country because this is our nation, period. Nick H says, I prefer Boebert to MTG at this point. I mean, MTG's not really been on a roll lately with the McCarthy stuff. And I mean, this is like whatever. I mean, you could say it's like good intentions, it's boomer talk, whatever. But yeah, it's not exactly something that's going to work. Werther says Miles Pfeiffer based or cringe. I don't know what that is. If the fast one says, wouldn't banning or proposing to ban TikTok and or porn cause a backlash from young voters and cost Republicans elections? Well, you got to explain it effectively. You have to push the Overton window on these issues. There are issues we're talking about now that nobody was talking about 4 or 5 years ago. So things definitely change in the political climate, in the cultural climate, whatever. But still, I mean, I would say that we would be able to do better with these voters if we were actually proactive about some of these issues that are not talked about enough that do affect younger people. So fairly odd politics is, what does the political future look like for Wisconsin long term? It's still going to be moving to the right, I think, but the speed at which it does is going to determine on the state party. Tommy Robinson says Kevin McCarthy promised to release the J6 footage, but he gave Fox News exclusive rights instead. Yeah. Well, I mean, it does seem as if it's released, I don't really care. But if that's what he's doing and Fox just sits on it, which they might do, then that's just a dumb move. And like, he could deflect the blame because maybe he doesn't want it released. So do our own type of TikTok app. I mean, that's preferable. It is a good way, you could say, to reach people in terms of politics, but you don't have conservative TikTok because you get banned instantly because that's how the platform works. So you're not going to be reaching a whole lot of people. What camera and green screen do you use? This is an iMac camera, I believe. It's HD and green. I don't even know the brand of the green screen. This one's a lot smaller than the other one, but it's more effective and efficient. So let's see. If Trump loses 2024, what would be your reaction? I mean, I'm not entirely surprised if he would have gotten the nomination and lost, because the GOP establishment and the Democrats as well are going to do anything possible they can to stop him in a general. That's plain and simple. Based Cato says, what's your go-to thing to do when you try to get your mind off of politics? Hit the gym. That's basically it. I mean, like, that's something everybody should be doing. There's no reason for you to not get as physically fit and in shape as you possibly can. There's just no reason for you to. So I think that's something that everybody can get involved with. Of course, if you, like, say that you, I don't know, like, want to watch this movie or like watch sports or whatever, you're going to have people that are going to be throwing a temper tantrum on either side of that debate. Like, oh, well, you can't watch sports. That's the system. It's corporate, whatever. Or same thing goes for like, I guess, certain movies, which I mean, you could argue is true to an extent. But at the same time, regardless of whatever debate you're on of the whole sports thing or like the other stuff, it's like, yeah, everybody should be lifting, hands down. There's no questions asked about that. Trump DeSantis 2024 says, this is a serious question I have. I've seen some stuff around the news saying Trump might run a third-party campaign if he loses to DeSantis. I assume that means. Would you support this? Do you see him doing this, or do you see him campaigning for DeSantis? If he loses, I don't see him running third-party. I think he'd lose a lot of support, and it would really tarnish his legacy had he done that. Okay, they projected Daniel Kelly the winner of the primary here, so he will advance to the general. That's as expected to a lot of people. Or do I see, okay, back to the question, do I see Trump campaigning for DeSantis? I don't really see him, I wouldn't see him doing that. I think that he's kind of like the type of guy that would just say vote for DeSantis and then just stay out of it and just go golf at Mar-a-Lago, basically. I don't know. Nick H says, as long as the loser right refuses to vote for Republicans they don't like in a general election, we will be at a disadvantage. Yeah, either way, a divided party is not good. That is something that I will say. But you don't get to complain about, oh, this guy's not electable or whatever, if you're not willing to vote for them because you're just petty and bitter. Like, that's not how this works. And you saw a lot of people doing that with the whole Doug Mastriano type of stuff in Pennsylvania, whatever. But yeah, it is true. Elector Bros do only exist on the internet. But at the same time, a lot of people do feel that way when, you know, people are asked polls and primaries, who or what's your reason for voting? Electability is usually at like 30% on the exit poll. A lot of people misconstrue what that exactly means. John Waffle H2P says we need to disband NATO. I don't really know enough about that to comment on that, but it is true that NATO, it was created really just to provoke Russia, basically. I mean, that was kind of the reason why it was created. And they keep taking in these Baltic states that are on the border with Russia. And what is it doing? It's exactly just stoking the tension. It's pushing Russia directly into the hands of China, which is it should not be the end game. It really should not. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of NATO. I don't know how it would be disbanded efficiently or effectively, but I mean, I wouldn't matter if we just left it. All these like unions are really just serving the global order. That's all they do. The EU, NATO, UN to a certain extent, even though I don't believe that it's really pragmatic that we're going to find a way to leave that. Probably could actually have a lot of consequences from what I understand, but let's see. Overall, is this a W or an L result? I would say that it's like a tie. We'll wait and we'll see. Simon says, what are some good places or ways you would recommend to meet high-value women? Well, that's a very loaded question there. There's a lot of potential answers. Some people will say church. Some people will say you just got to go to the places where the high-value women would be. It really depends what you're looking for, basically. Nick H's thoughts on the Monroe Doctrine. I think it's a very good thing that we should have stuck to, that we didn't. Base Katos' opinion on woke animations bombing in the reviews. Yeah, I mean, I've heard like about these woke like reboots of these shows or whatever. I'm not surprised. If all they're doing is pushing the political agenda, you're going to have less people that are conservative tuning in. But still, they're able to make money. They're doing it for a reason. It is still relatively profitable. And it's kind of like they have like a mathematical curve that are like trying to maximize profits while still pushing the agenda at the same time. And sometimes they drop the ball on it. But the whole like go woke, go broke thing, it's kind of a misconception because people that are going woke are not going broke. And that should really tell you something about that. Like, yes, there's some things like, yeah, NASCAR, if NASCAR goes woke, whatever, yeah, they're going to lose some people. If something that typically is consumed by right-wingers goes woke, they're probably going to dip in support. But, like, in reality, it's like go woke, go broke is kind of a myth. Sadly, I wish it was true because then everybody would be broke and then we'd actually be controlling the economy, which we're not controlling it. But literally, God says bigger threat, China or the United Nations. I'd probably say I think that they're both threats in different ways. And you have a lot of like pro-China right-wingers now, and I don't think that that's exactly the best way of looking at this because China does not have our best interests in mind. Yes, they might do some base things, right? They have masculinity training. They ban the bad stuff on their TikTok, but they're still exporting a lot of this stuff here as well. And they're not the only country that does that, but it is true. They're an adversary. They're a competitor. I'm not like the biggest, we got to go to war with them right now type of guy. And there's a lot of neocons that want war with China, and they're very misconstrued. But they don't have our best interest in mind either. I will say that. Shout out to Robin Hill for the super chat. So they called this election, 90% of the vote is in, and it does seem as if Dems will very likely end up getting a majority of the round one, combine the two people together. Trolling going on in the chat tonight, which was interesting because it's been a while. Yes, it has. It's been a while. It's been a while, but what can I say? Alex Kuchar says thoughts on Putin. I'm not exactly somebody that's going to like be the biggest pro-Putin LARPer, but do I believe he's misunderstood by the current regime? Absolutely. 100%. And that much is very true. And he's somebody who I don't think is really our best interest in mind 100% of the time. I'm not pro-Putin infallibly, but he does represent a threat to this globalist regime as well. And I'd rather have him on our side, even if it's like a friendly thing, than push him into the arms of China and build like this ridiculous anti-American force the way that a lot of these, Russia hawks want to do. I will say that. John Waffle says, was Nixon the original America First president? He ended the draft. I would say no. I mean, he did a lot of bad things, I will say. I'm not going to say that he's the worst president ever, but I mean, ending the mental asylums arguably was a disaster. Ending the whole, starting the whole EPA, the Employment Prevention Agency, wasn't really something that is really looked fond upon on my part of his record, but yeah, I wouldn't say he's the original America First president. I don't know how many real original America First presidents we've even had. I mean, you could say Monroe had the Monroe Doctrine, whatever, that was America First. I think presidents have had tendencies that are America First, but I don't believe we've had a president that's been 100% America First by the definition. Trump DeSantis 2024 says, do you support DeSantis' stance on Ukraine from this week? He said he doesn't want to send blank checks to fighting a proxy war. I mean, it's rhetoric. Some of what he said was good, but then he attacked Trump, arguably, subtly, for not, for being too friendly with Russia as well. So I don't know. I will say that in terms of Trump being the America First president or whatever, you could make a case for him, but even then a lot of people in his administration were not that and made sure that his agenda was not that. Coolidge, I think, in a lot of ways he severely limited immigration and overall was pretty decent. So base Kato says maybe get base, get your wallet lace is a more true statement. We've seen this many times, like with Goya or with the new Harry Potter game. I mean, that's also true. Like, people that move to the right probably do also see a spike, because I think a lot of people that consume this entertainment or this content just doesn't care. And that's the problem. And maybe they just see more of a benefit to be fighting on the side of the system 100% compared to being, a dissident to it in some capacity, even though both may actually increase your profit margin past a certain point. And that much is true. But all right, we're going to end the stream. Thank you guys for tuning in. We will be back on April 4th. Obviously, we'll be back before that. We'll make video tomorrow, whatever. But the next election stream will be on April 4th. We will get to the part 2 or round 2 of this. And I will see you guys next time. Like before you go, subscribe before you go, and hit that bell. And I will see you guys next time. Red Eagle, out.